Welcome to The Explainer. Look, if you're in the market for a top-tier smartphone right now, you are facing what is essentially the ultimate tech dilemma. It's the heavyweight showdown we literally look forward to every single year, the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra going head-to-head with the Apple iPhone 17 Pro Max. We're talking about two of the most powerful, feature-packed, and frankly, most expensive pieces of glass and metal you can possibly put in your pocket. But which one actually delivers on its promises? Today we're cutting through the hype, we're going to break down the specs, the lab tests, and the real-world performance to give you a completely impartial, zero-fluff breakdown. So before we really get into the weeds here, I've got to ask you, which ecosystem do you naturally lean towards? Are you a ride-or-die iOS loyalist, or do you totally love the open customization of Android? Kind of keep that preference in the back of your mind as we go. Because what we're going to do today is strip away all that brand loyalty and translate these crazy specs into actual, tangible, real-world benefits. By the end of this, I'm telling you, you might just find your loyalties tested.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got 5 distinct rounds on the agenda today. Look and feel, power and performance, the camera and video showdown, battery and charging battles, and wrapping it up with the final verdict.
Let's kick things right off with round 1. Look and feel. Because, let's be honest, how a phone actually sits in your hand dictates almost your entire experience with it. Now, on paper, the physical dimensions might seem kind of similar, but man, they are incredibly noticeable in your palm. Samsung gives us this lighter, ridiculously sleek device at just 214 grams and a super thin 7.9 millimeters thick, all wrapped up in Gorilla Armor too. Apple, on the flip side, leans into a heavier, more substantial build. It's 233 grams and 8.8 millimeters thick, utilizing their ceramic shield 2 over an aluminum frame. Basically, Samsung is optimizing for a comfortable, thin grip while Apple's density gives it that classic, weighty premium feel. Oh, and it's absolutely worth a quick mention that Samsung still somehow packs the built-in S Pen inside that thinner chassis. That is a massive productivity tool the iPhone simply doesn't even attempt to match. Moving over to the screens themselves, both offer absolutely stunning 6.9-inch, 120Hz OLED panels. But Samsung has a really clever trick up its sleeve here. They've integrated what they're calling a privacy display. If you've ever been on a packed subway or a cramped middle seat on a flight and felt like the person next to you is totally reading your text messages, well, this solves it. It physically narrows the viewing angle, so only the person looking dead center, which is you, can actually read the screen. It's just a brilliant translation of a hardware spec into a real-world, everyday benefit.
All right, round 2, power and performance. Because a beautiful screen means absolutely nothing if the engine running it stutters, right? Looking at the horsepower under the hood, we've got the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, which is custom-tuned for Galaxy, going head-to-head with Apple's brand-new A19 Pro. Both of these are cutting-edge 3nm chips, paired with a baseline of 12 GB of RAM. What you really need to take away from this is that both of these phones are absolute monsters. For your day-to-day tasks, rapidly switching between apps, or heavy multitasking, neither of these devices is going to break a sweat.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how things shake out in synthetic benchmarks. Samsung's overclocked Snapdragon actually edges out Apple's A19 Pro in multi-core performance. It scored over 11,500 compared to Apple's 10,100 and change. Historically, Apple has just dominated these silicon benchmarks, so seeing Samsung actually take the lead here, that really shows just how much optimization they've done under the hood this year.
But raw speed isn't the whole software story. 7, that is the number of years Samsung is promising for OS updates. Apple currently promises 5. So the really crucial point here is, if you're someone who buys a premium phone with the intention of driving it into the ground for the better part of a decade, Samsung is guaranteeing that your software will stay current, secure, and updated longer than the iPhone.
Okay, let's snap into round 3, the camera and video showdown. For a whole lot of you watching, this is the main event. You aren't just buying a phone, you're buying your primary daily camera. Guiding you through these megapixel counts, Samsung basically throws massive numbers at the wall with a 200-megapixel main sensor, compared to Apple's unified 48-megapixel array across the back. Now, in broad daylight, both of these main cameras are phenomenal. Apple defaults to a 24-megapixel output for a computational boost in detail. But honestly, in reality, there's no massive earth-shattering gap between that and Samsung's default 12-megapixel files. The real story happens when we look at the specific shooting modes. Because here is where the practical differences actually lie. Samsung utilizes a dual telephoto setup, which gives it a really distinct edge in clarity when you zoom into that 5x range. Furthermore, for selfies, Samsung is actually rendering fine details like facial hair or fabric textures much more impressively. On the flip side, Apple absolutely takes the crown in low light at the 2x zoom range, capturing noticeably sharper detail. And while Samsung selfies might be sharper, Apple uses a wider 20mm lens up front. That means you can fit more of your friends, or way more of that epic background, into your frame.
Now, when we switch from photos to video, the dynamic shifts just a bit. Both shoot stunning 4K at 60 frames per second with Dolby Vision. But generally speaking, the iPhone produces sharper, more contrast-rich footage, particularly when you're zooming while recording. It pretty much remains the gold standard for mobile video. However, Samsung throws a massive right hook here by offering 8K video capture at 30 frames per second. That's a feature the iPhone completely lacks. So if you're a creator needing massive resolution to crop into later, Samsung is literally your only option here.
Next up, round 4, battery and charging battles. Welcome to the ultimate endurance round.
So if you only looked at battery capacity, you'd probably assume Samsung wins this effortlessly, right? I mean, it's got a 5,000 milliamp hour cell compared to Apple's 4823. But look at the active use scores. The iPhone actually outlasts the Galaxy by over an hour and a half, hitting nearly 18 hours of active use. The iPhone is just incredibly efficient, especially when it comes to things like web browsing and gaming, pulling way more life out of a slightly smaller battery.
But hey, what happens when that battery finally dies? 43 minutes. That is all the time it takes to plug the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra into the wall with its 60-watt charger and go from completely dead all the way to 100% full. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole philosophical difference between the two companies, because it takes the iPhone 17 Pro Max 72 minutes to achieve that same full charge. Apple maxes out around 42 to 50 watts. So while the iPhone lasts a bit longer during the day, the Samsung gets you back into the action almost half an hour faster. It's also worth a quick mention that for wireless charging, Apple has a clear edge with built-in MagSafe magnets, whereas Samsung requires a specialized case to hit its top wireless speeds.
Which brings us to round 5, the final verdict. Because all these specs and cameras mean nothing if the price isn't right.
Let's look at the raw math here. For the 256GB base models in the US, the Galaxy S26 Ultra comes in at $977, while the iPhone 17 Pro Max demands just under $1,170. That is a nearly $200 price advantage for Samsung right out of the gate. And if you're watching this in Europe, that gap is actually even wider in Samsung's favor. From a pure value-for-money perspective, Samsung is aggressively undercutting Apple this generation.
So who is the Samsung for? Well, you should go for the Galaxy S26 Ultra if you really value a device that feels noticeably lighter and thinner in your hand. It's for the user who loves unique utility, like flipping on that privacy display during a crowded commute or pulling out the built-in S Pen to jot down a quick note. It's definitely for the power user who demands 43-minute rapid charging, hyper-detailed selfies, and the absolute peace of mind that comes with 7 full years of guaranteed software updates.
On the other side of the ring, you should absolutely choose the iPhone 17 Pro Max if sheer endurance is your top priority. I mean, nearly 18 hours of active use is incredibly hard to beat. It's for the user who loves the whole ecosystem of MagSafe, magnetic charging, and accessories. It's also the clear-cut choice for mobile videographers wanting the absolute best contrast and sharpness out there. Add in warmer, premium-sounding stereo speakers and the undeniable long-term stability and crazy high resale value of iOS, and it's a fiercely compelling package.
At the end of the day, both of these devices represent the absolute pinnacle of their respective platforms. If you're already locked deep into one world, jumping ship is always a tough sell. But if you're buying fresh, the lines have literally never been more blurred, and the competition has never been tighter. So look at your priorities, look at how you actually use your phone every single day, and ask yourself, given the data, which ecosystem are you investing your $1,000 in today? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the tech you use every day.